As more and more of our communities lock down, you may be having more and more trouble with the notion of self-isolation. And if so, no better person to turn to for advice than our next guest.
There's never been a better time to self-isolate. So many people have access to the internet that you have the entire written work of everything, all the body of knowledge right there at your fingertips.
Chris Hadfield, the video he put up on his YouTube channel, which probably, like all of his videos, is getting a bajillion views. He may be Canada's most famous isolation expert after months as commander of the International Space Station. He's in Corunna, Ontario this morning, and we're so delighted to have some time with him. Thank you, Chris, for joining us and going to answer some questions even a little bit later on. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for asking, and you're looking well. I'm pleased to see you, and thanks for taking the time to help inform Canadians right across the country on what to do next, but also how everybody's doing. I think it's really important and healthy right now.
Well, it's a real check-in every morning. It's been quite striking how Canadians have come with various types of questions, and we thought we'd speak to you about this whole idea of how to make the most of self-isolating, how to deal with self-isolating. My question first is, when you were up in the International Space Station for all those months, it's big, but it's still a confined space. How do you deal with the confined space of an apartment or a small house?
Yeah, confined spaces are almost entirely psychological. If you think about your normal life, you don't travel infinitely every single day. There are very specific, confined, repeatable things you do every single day. You just get used to that as being normal. So when the normal shifts, suddenly you feel sort of disrupted or maybe confined. You could even have the opposite. If you were suddenly thrown out in the middle of the prairies, you would feel sort of lost as well because you almost have too much space. I think the real thing to do is to just look at the reality of where you are and the opportunities that you have and the way you can still be productive and interact and mentally stimulated. And just go with that. Stop worrying that it's different, and instead go with the reality of the new set of rules that you're living under.
Okay, and I like opportunities, and I want to come to those in a second because we have some young Canadians who are looking for your suggestions for opportunities. Okay, that's space. How about connection and family? You have family. There you were, 400 kilometers above them, circling around and around. How were you able to stay connected and maintain those relationships? What can we learn from that?
Heather, it's probably worth mentioning, and I'm sure you know, I flew in space 3 times. On my first space flight, it was a long time ago, back in 1995, the internet was just in its infancy, and there sure wasn't any social media. And I was truly isolated during that space flight. I couldn't communicate hardly with anybody on Earth. But by the time my 3rd space flight happened with social media, suddenly I had the entire world right there at my fingertips. I could take a picture and push send, write some little comment on it, push send, and 1 billion people could share in something that I'd seen. That little clip you showed, there's never been a better time to self-isolate because our technology, our inventiveness, the capability that we now have. I mean, you can pick up your phone and dial 10 numbers and talk to anybody in North America sort of effortlessly. And we can set up video like this of you and I speaking to each other with almost no effort. So that whole idea of isolation has really been eased by technology. That was true up on the space station, that I saw the evolution over my space flights. But I think it's a real boon right now. Imagine if no one had any sort of communication, even telephone right now. This would be much more difficult to bear.
So, wouldn't want to wish going through this, but if we are, thankfully it's in these times. I'm going to bring in over the course of our conversation some questions from viewers, and I asked specifically, Chris, for viewers who are Canadian children, Canadian kids, because you're going to be doing a special radio interview with people out in British Columbia. I thought we could be a bit of a warm-up for you, and we've had some great questions from youngsters. So this is a combo, and they're both the same. Aiden Muriel's 10 years old and from Whitby, Ontario. Chris, a question about, are there viruses in space? And I just pause for a second. We also heard from Braden, who's 6 and who saw you in Sarnia this summer, incidentally, wanting to know about how whether people can get sick in space. So I don't know if that reflects a child's fear of viruses, but interesting from both of those, a similar question about, are there viruses in space?
Well, back when I was about the same age as, I think you said, Aiden and Braden, we launched a spaceship and we hadn't done anything to worry about people getting sick. And one of the crew members had a bad cold, and that it was just coming on. And so they got to space and they spread it amongst the whole crew, and they were all congested. They couldn't clear their ears, which is really dangerous when you have to change pressure on a spaceship. And we learned from that. And we realized you can't launch any sort of virus or medical problem up to a space station because there's so much less medical care up there. We truly want to flatten the curve on a spaceship. And so ever since then, we now have a medical quarantine, like a 2-week self-isolation prior to launch, so that if you did have some sort of virus, it has a chance for your body to deal with it and for you to not get anything new, for everybody to understand it, so that then we can launch healthy people. And on one of the space flights, in fact, we thought one of the crew members might have been exposed to the measles. And so they got pulled off the crew, and we put in another crew just sort of at the last couple days, just so that no one would get an outbreak of the measles on board. So yeah, we take it really seriously for the people that are living in space, just like the two of you and everybody across the country need to take this seriously. You may think it's just me, but it's the impact it can have on other people and medical care that we really need to think about.
So you try to stay healthy, 100% healthy in space, obviously. Can you talk about the importance of staying healthy while you're up there? And I'm thinking, again, lessons we can learn from confined spaces, how important it is to eat well, to sleep as much as possible. We often see astronauts on the treadmill, keeping physically fit. Chris, what could we extrapolate from that again?
Well, we call it on a spaceship, you're sort of on an expedition. You know, if you want to try and visualize what you're doing. You're leaving your normal life and your normal world, and with a small group of people going off to do something dangerous and interesting and new and different. So we call it an expedition. And so we have expeditionary behaviors. And part of it, of course, is what we just talked about, not bringing a cold. But a large part of it is in normal life, if you, say, break your arm, it's bad, it hurts, but you can get it dealt with. You can go to see a doctor and they'll put a splint or somebody in. And for a few weeks, you'll have a broken arm. Not a huge deal in normal life. But if you're on an expedition, then that can have an enormous impact on your ability to be part of the team or to take care of the things you need to do or even to deal with your own problem. So now it's sort of like everybody's on a little expedition. And you need to think about the fact that something that normally wouldn't be a big deal now can be a much bigger deal. And so you need to take better care. You need to be more deliberate and thoughtful about your actions. You need to recognize that things that happen to you are now going to impact every single person that's in your little expeditionary group. And you need to keep yourself healthy. You know, you can live on Cheetos and soda pop for so long, but you're going to have to keep your body healthy until this whole thing's run its course. Our doctors and medical staff are super busy dealing with the people that are really sick. So you know, think beyond yourself. Recognize that this is a human problem, a humanity-wide thing, and you, with your little crew, are a vital part of that. So take care of yourself every minute.
Think beyond yourself. Okay, Zoya is 13. She wonders, when she's in isolation, how much time should she be putting toward learning? And what might be the best type of learning for her in these circumstances?
My philosophy on learning has always been, Heather and Zoya, that when someone is willing to teach you something for free, take them up on it. You know, if some expert, you know, if someone pulls you to the side and says, hey, do you actually know what the liver does in the body? Let me take 2 minutes and tell you what the liver actually does, or how a light bulb works, or whatever. Right now, maybe for the first time in a long time, you've got some downtime, some opportunity to actually learn things. And the internet, the way I'm communicating with you right now, right there at your fingertips is expertise on unlimited subjects. Anything you've ever been curious about, you can now dig into and really get it squared away in your mind. So Zoe, my recommendation to you would be, what is it that when you think about it, it kind of makes you smile, kind of makes you think, wow, that's it. I want to know more about that. You know, how does the thermonuclear reaction in the middle of the sun work? Or why do leaves turn brown in the fall? Or why is water blue? Or whatever. Or what opportunity coming out of this COVID pandemic, what new business opportunities are there going to be? Because life is still going to go on for billions of people, and there's going to be new changes. There's a million things you could be learning about right now, but do the ones that fascinate you. It doesn't have to matter to anybody else. The ones that you find kind of exciting, and really dig into it right now. Build your body of knowledge. And when we come out the other side of this little tunnel that we're all going through, you're going to be a slightly different person with a new set of skills.
Chris, I have 3 questions at least I want to blast through in the last 4 minutes that we have together. So I'm going to do them quickly if I can. Griffin wants to know the opposite of learning, which might be for some kids a little bit, heavy and onerous. He wants to know if when you're in self-isolation and you don't have all the supplies you want for your fun activity, what do you do when you don't have all the supplies for your fun activity?
Wherever you're living, I would go through, this is what we do on a spaceship as well. If you got a little time, go through and inventory the stuff inside where you're living, apartment or house or whatever it is, that you don't normally dig into. The back of closets, the top of shelves, things inside boxes. Find things that are there, and I bet you'll come across some stuff that hadn't even occurred to you, like a box of old photographs, or a ukulele, or a harmonica, or I don't know, some old piece of electronics equipment, or some old camera or something. And you can then make that your entertainment for the day. I'm going to do something with this thing that I just discovered in my own home. And on board a spaceship, the space station, the first piece was launched in 1998, 22 years ago. It's sort of like an old attic. A lot of places up there, you can find cool stuff from 20 crews ago that there's a gorilla suit up there, and musical instruments. And I found this beautiful, big, resonating Japanese bell that had been brought up for something. And it was so lovely to ring this bell and have it float sort of humming through the space station. So I investigate your own environment and look for new ways to sort of stimulate your own thought and create new things with them.
You mentioned the ukulele. How can we forget you performing so many times with your guitar? And Stephanie Goodfellow sends in a question on behalf of Miles, who's 11 and from London Aunt. Can you suggest a good beginner song?
Yeah, Miles, something that has very simple chords. When I started, I tried to find musicians that I really liked, that I thought were good and creative, but who didn't play really complicated stuff. Songs that they had written at home on guitar. Someone like, I don't know, Bob Dylan, who is one of the best songwriters ever, but he wasn't a really good guitar player, nor a really good singer. He's just a terrific poet and creator of ideas. And so I would start with some of the old traditional songs, Red River Valley, it's 2 chords. Or there's a song called Ride On by Christy Moore. It's 3 chords and they're all easy. Or Blowin' in the Wind by Bob Dylan. And just make it really simple. And don't learn 50 songs, a little bit. Learn one song completely, so that if anybody says to you, Liam, hey, can you play guitar? You don't have to say, well, I sort of. You say, yeah, I know Blowin' in the Wind. And learn every single word and practice it and figure out how to play it. And once you've learned one song, then you're a musician.
Beautiful.
And then you can learn another song.
Last question, and it's a timely one. 6-year-old Evelyn, Chris, is looking for some ideas on how to celebrate her birthday while she's in isolation.
Gosh, there's so many fun new ways to celebrate that are different than normal. Like you're 6 years old, so you could have 6 friends join in, and everybody's there on your screen in front of you. You could send each of them something that you're all going to join together and do. Like each of them gets a color, and then you put together a rainbow. Each of them gets a word, and you put together sentences. Or each of them gets a little bit of a song, and each person sings one line, and between the group of you, you finish a song together. Or everybody has to develop their own surprise. Or depending when your birthday is, everybody plants a little plant, and you show how it's growing after that number of days in between. Or just use the technology to share individual ideas and accomplishments and put it together in a way, sort of like this new jigsaw puzzle, where our pieces are separate, but when you put them together, they create something that now looks like a finished picture.
Beautiful.
I mean, we celebrate birthday parties and holidays and everything from the space station, and it's actually quite lovely and nice. You get maybe more chance to think about it, and it becomes almost a little more personal and intimate. So celebrate your birthday like crazy. This will be a birthday like no other.
And happy birthday. Listen, you have to go and do an interview with Paris. So I'm going to say goodbye, but I do want to say, Chris, before I let you go, Matthew in Ottawa, Elspeth in Ottawa, and Brody, who loves your book, The Darkest Dark, they had questions too, but they weren't really on self-isolation. So we'll have to have you back, and we'll just talk generally about life as an astronaut on another occasion. I wanted to focus this on isolation for these times. But Chris Hadfield, as always, such a privilege and a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for answering our questions today.
Thank you, Heather. Take care of yourself and be well. And hello to everybody at the studio that's allowing you to communicate info to all Canadians. Thanks for doing that.
Thanks, Chris.